All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. So, welcome everyone to the Safe Streets for All office hours. We're super excited to be here with you this evening to share more with you about our program, give you the opportunity to ask questions, and most importantly, hear about your concerns and feedback for the Safe Streets for All program. So, before we get started, I want to introduce myself. My name is Jasmine Isaac. I am the Community Engagement Specialist for the city. So if you've been to one of our public meetings, you may have seen my face. Please, if you find me or see me, do not hesitate to approach, ask a question. I am here to help and be involved with projects, and most importantly, to hear from you, the community, which makes all of our projects special. So before we begin, some quick technology ins and outs and housekeeping. This is a webinar session, so we don't actually have the ability to actively speak with you, but we do have the ability to take your questions. So there's a really neat Q&A feature at the bottom taskbar, whether you're on your phone or the computer, and you can type in your question throughout the session. Those questions will come straight to me. And at the end of our presentation today, we'll read those questions aloud and be able to answer those for you. And of course, if you have any questions, even after this session, the contact information for our staff is on the Safe Streets website, the exact same place where you found the link for today's meeting. So we'll move forward with some housekeeping rules. Of course, we know everyone has their opinion and their thoughts, but we ask during these sessions that you keep an open mind. Please, all questions, critiques, focus those on the projects and presentation at hand and not the people. We're here for you to help, to understand, but most importantly, to respect one another as we're in this space asking questions and gathering information and learning from one another. And lastly, before we begin, for all of our projects, we desire to do public engagement uh, because all that we do is for the community and for our city. And you guys are the ones who make this city a city. So we appreciate when you ask us questions or concerns. Sometimes the things that you ask, we haven't thought of, or maybe we could think of them in a better way. So please don't hesitate to ask. But at this time, my duty is done. So I'll pass it on to our transportation staff and we'll kickstart it with Suzanne Flowers.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Suzanne Flowers. I'm one of the transportation team members here tonight to talk to you about our Safe Streets for All project that we have been awarded from the Federal Highway Administration. And I'd like to have my colleague introduce himself as well.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cyrus Nahidi. I'm a transportation engineer with the city. So Suzanne and I are working on the Safe Streets for All project. As she noted, it's a grant we were awarded, and we'll get into that as we start the presentation.
All right. So tonight we will be reviewing the presentation slide deck that is already on the website. And I'm sorry, I have this gnat that is following me from one room to the next. So if you see me swat, I'm just trying to not eat said bug. But we will be going over the background context of the why, our project overview, benefits, our schedule, community engagement approach, quick build and speed management elements, our near miss analytics tasks. Those are the 3 elements of the grant that were awarded, and then our next steps. So I'm going to turn it over to Cyrus to talk a little bit about our background context.
All right. So yeah, we obviously can see there's some people here, but I don't know what context everyone has for what the city has been doing in the transportation space over the last year, over the last 5 years, etc. So for background context, in 2021, we, as staff, well, it was completed prior to that, but the moving together towards Vision Zero comprehensive transportation plan was adopted by City Council in June 2021. It was completed shortly before that. And it sets strategies that, if undertaken collectively, will create safer streets throughout Ann Arbor for all road users, with an emphasis on vulnerable road users like pedestrians, bicyclists, and those outside of vehicles, since those inside vehicles have some inherent protection. 5 community values were formed throughout that extensive community engagement, and they shaped these strategies. So safety, as you know, Safe Streets for All, that grant, this in the name of the grant itself. Mobility, accessibility for all, healthy people and sustainable places, and regional connectivity.
As part of that moving together plan development and those 5 values, we really honed in through community engagement and interactions with the public and city leadership on 2 critical goals of the plan. That being that no one dies or is seriously injured in crashes on Ann Arbor streets. We do have a target of eliminating all of those fatalities and serious injury crashes by 2025. And yes, that is this year. Additionally, because of the result of all the work and effort, we also are looking to achieve carbon neutrality, where our transportation system has 0 emissions towards our climate change. And we really want to see that transition happen by 2030. As part of the plan development, and there is an image on the screen, we wanted to look at and understand where our kind of focused or high injury network corridors were as part of the plan development. So we have some corridors that are a higher focus. Those would be our tier 1 focus corridors, such as a Miller Road, Main Street, and Plymouth. And then we also have tier 2 focus corridors, such as Huron Parkway, parts of Glacier, Getty, and Liberty. Throughout that plan development, we also wanted to really find out those key intersections where we're seeing, you know, the frequency and severity of crashes. And we also did that through a similar methodology to identify those kind of top ranking intersections. Some of those intersections are showcased as dots on this map. A lot of them you will see are located along State Street. We have some corridor crashes, specific focus intersections along Washtenaw Avenue and along the Huron corridor. We are actually in the development of updating these corridors and focus intersections, and we'll be bringing that back to the public in the next couple of months.
So in 2022 and 2023 was sort of the first, I guess, standalone project that worked to implement part of that Vision Zero plan. So there's the Vision Zero Action Implementation Plan. So it was that, as noted here, it was that initial phase, and it of the moving together towards Vision Zero plan. It established a speed management program for our major streets. Previously, we only had a residential traffic calming program for our local streets, and it was resident driven. So even though we had been pursuing tactics and using tools to manage speeds on our major streets, it wasn't really a cohesive program. So I think that program kind of is helping to bolster what we can do on our major streets. And then, you know, the most noticeable thing in terms of for those, you know, living and working in town was that we implemented these 7 quick build projects. And you'll notice we call it quick build 1.0. We've been using that terminology internally and starting to use it a little more externally with how we've been, you know, trying to iterate through these projects. So I think it was built in 2023. There might have been a little bit at the tail end of 2022 as well, as noted in the years at the top, 2022 to 23. So this first round of implementation was intended to make progress sort of quickly on our priority intersections and locations, and to inform our future quick build treatments, as well as our long-term, you know, more permanent infrastructure treatments. So see the map on the left. Notice some of those locations, it overlaps pretty well with that sort of tier 1, tier 2 focus map that Suzanne just showed. You know, for those of you who do have familiarity with the plan, you'll know that the plan does have more than just that as a map. So there's, ideas about and trying to make more of our streets bicycle friendly, and a lot of those investments happen on streets that aren't focus corridor. So even if it's not necessarily a street with our biggest safety problems, there's still value in trying to create a more cohesive bicycling network. So, and that's where some of these treatments also come in. So, and on 4th Street, we had green pavement markings and bump outs with city posts. Glen at Fuller, similarly green pavement markings, and then a hardened center line for the turn lanes. So just a few examples. And again, for those of you who've been around town, who've seen these locations, you probably have at least some passing familiarity with seeing some of these changes.
Great, thanks, Cyrus. The next slide that we are showcasing are our current safety trends. This is a dashboard that is available on our Crash Facts safety website. You can also see this information in our annual snapshot, and the information on the screen notes the 5-year rolling average of our crashes, those pedestrians, cyclists, and motorists that have been killed in crashes, and the different injury types that we are seeing in serious injury crashes across the city. We really had started seeing a dip in this 5-year rolling average, and our current 2023 data does show a little bit of an uptick. And while that is concerning, very concerning to us as staff, we are not going to get into all of the safety trends tonight, but if you do have questions, we can seek to address some of that. But that is really the point of our Safe Streets for All grant, is to really address the increase in crashes, not only that we're seeing in the city, but across the state of Michigan and across the nation as well.
So, just expanding on that goal a little bit more. So eliminating fatalities and serious injury crashes. We have is a subset of our total, where we term them K, which is the sort of code for a fatal crash, or A, which is the code for a serious injury crash. This, according to the the state's crash coding system. And you can see from the graph on the left that those involving pedestrians and bicyclists is a notable subset of crashes that have fatalities or serious injuries. It is of course possible to be in a car. It can be a collision between 2 or more vehicles being driven, and the people in those can be seriously injured or killed. But as stated by the name, a vulnerable road user is more vulnerable. So and the graphic on the right kind of speaks to that a little bit, which is the importance of bringing speeds down so that if crashes happen, because the Vision Zero mentality doesn't necessarily work to eliminate. The goal isn't to eliminate crashes; it's to eliminate severe crashes. So, what if crashes happen? They're going to be happening more like at 25, 20 miles an hour as opposed to 30, 40 or more. So that, as noted on the right, that means that the chance of a serious injury or survival are a lot higher. So slowing the vehicle speed, I often say when people ask, out and about in town and find out what I do, what's the one thing you would do? I'd say I would wave a magic wand and make everyone drive 5 to 10 miles per hour slower. And unfortunately, we can't do that, so that's why we're here.
So now we're going to get into a bit more of the nuance of the Safe Streets for All grant. So I want to outline a little bit of what the grant is. So Ann Arbor had actually put forth a much larger grant. It was approximately $22 million in our ask. And the USDOT awarded us $3.8 million. And they funded 3 out of the numerous elements that we had asked for. Those 3 elements being the quick build, speed management, and our near miss video analytics. So again, $3.8 million, design and implementation of the second round of quick build safety improvements are one component of the grant. We will be looking to advance the city speed management program on major streets. And then again, using this near miss video analytics, which is using existing grid smart cameras that we already have across the city at approximately 61 locations to better understand the safety concerns of, someone had mentioned like a near hit event. So someone that was not injured, there was somebody who was able to remove themselves from a potential crash, but we want to better understand the conditions by which those events are occurring around the community. And so those are the three main elements that the grant will be funding.
So the project is really working towards a few specific outcomes that help us achieve our Vision Zero goal. The reduction in severe and fatal crashes on those project corridors and those project locations that we implement. More specifically, a reduction in crashes for vulnerable road users, so those outside vehicles. And kind of in tandem with all that, a reduction in our vehicle speeds. So the percentage of vehicles driving above the speed limit. And again, these are all related to each other, but they are all discrete outcomes. If we see a reduction in vehicle speeds, but we, for instance, don't see a reduction in crashes, there is still a very good chance that there would be a reduction in how many severe of those crashes are severe and fatal, or at least how many are severe and fatal for vulnerable road users. So they all they're related outcomes in that way, and that's kind of the goal of our overall Safe Streets for All project.
All right, so a little bit about our project schedule. I was under the understanding that quick build projects were quick. I'm going to tell you that they are not quick. When you use federal funds, there are a lot of restrictions and requirements that have to happen in order for our community to access these funds. And so this project schedule kind of outlines some of these key time points that we have to meet. So I'm actually going to go from kind of the bottom to the top. So one of those key points is the NEPA permitting. This is the National Environmental Protection Act. One of the conditions of our grant is that we have to review and package all of the potential locations and review the potential environmental impacts of our project. This is a key step in order for us to even move forward with final design of our scope of projects. That will be getting submitted actually this week. So once that NEPA permitting process has occurred, another important process that is not on here is a grant agreement amendment. Again, within the grant agreement itself, it says thou shall do NEPA, thou shall do a grant agreement amendment with USDOT. If we were to spend money before NEPA or before this grant agreement amendment, the city of Ann Arbor would be on the hook for paying for all of these project elements without getting any of that reimbursement. So it is really key that we follow these processes that our grant agreement outlines. So NEPA will be submitted this week. We're expecting that to take anywhere from 2 to 3 months. Could be shorter, could be longer, depending on the feedback we receive from Federal Highway. Probably what most people are looking at is when we're hoping to go to bid for construction. We are looking for construction actually in the summer of 2026. So we'd be putting out those bid documents in the January through March 2026 timeframe. And then we would have an evaluation of all of the Safe Streets for All project elements before the grant ends, before calendar year 2027. Going up one row, and Cyrus, as an engineer, I ask if you have any comments that you want to add in terms of the engineering components, please do jump in. Right now we are in concept development, looking at the potential project locations, what we're able to do with these grant dollars, and what we're not able to do. Because there are restrictions with the 3 grant elements that were funded. So right now we're in this kind of concept development phase. Once we go through our NEPA permitting, we'll be able to finish our preliminary design and then move into final design. And you'll see that's where we'll have additional rounds of public engagement to ensure the public understands how we selected project locations, how we are looking to do specific treatments, and if we're maybe missing something. We really do want to make sure that the public is a part of that selection and a part of that understanding. As I noted, we're looking to do project construction in the kind of spring, summer months of 2026, with an additional round of engagement and report release before the grant is finalized in the early years of 2027. Cyrus, I just want to pause there and see if there's any additional context you want to add for engineering.
No, I think that was summarized well. As you know, we'll get into this a little bit more in future slides. I mean, engagement is something, as Jasmine noted, we would be doing at the city anyway, but there are a number of restrictions and requirements about receiving this grant through federal dollars. So performing public engagement, adequate public engagement is one of them. Going through the environmental review process is another. And then, we'll get into details, but certain things, essentially anything that, would be permanent in nature. We can't install a new traffic signal, or frankly, even our flashing beacons, our yellow crosswalk, enhanced crosswalk signals. Those are all kind of off the table in terms of grant dollars for a quick build project. So just wanted to highlight that, it's as Suzanne noted, and as we sort of noted around our team, it is, a quick build is a funny name, especially when grant dollars are involved. So.
And so our engagement approach will build on prior engagement that we had done in the development of the transportation plan. We're really implementing that plan. That's really the phase of the plan that we're in, and this grant really tees into that implementation. However, as the previous slide noted, we will have additional opportunities for community engagement. We are sharing, obviously, that timeline, and we are really focusing on implementing the improvements where we know we need them. Again, not everywhere. $3.8 million sounds like a lot, but I'm going to tell you, paint is really expensive. And so there's certain, as Cyrus already noted, there's certain areas that, we may want to do more, but we are really limited with what was funded through this grant. But we do have those opportunities for feedback and comment during our final design phase. And so as the slide before outlined, we do have additional engagement opportunities on the horizon.
So among the treatments that are being proposed, none of them I think are going to be new to the city at this point. I think it's really building off of what we've been doing recently, learning from the things that work and don't work about some of the details. But this first one about buffered bike lanes using and creating some protection with them with delineator posts. So we have as part of new projects, we are starting to create more buffered bike lanes. But at this point, if a buffer lane, if there's enough space for it to be buffered, we want to be able to put posts in it and create a little bit more separation. So while new projects are able to kind of do both at once, reconfigure the space to create that buffer and put the post in it, we have a number of existing buffered lanes that don't have that. So that'll be one of our projects is going through our buffered bike lane spaces and adding those delineators. That's the other part. I think that of what Suzanne just mentioned. There's the paint of the pavement markings themselves. the posts themselves also do add up. I mean, it's still cheaper than concrete, but each of these posts, especially when considering installation cost, does start to add up when you space them closely together, which you kind of need to prohibit vehicle encroachment. But there's also a lot of paint treatments as well. So bike boxes at intersections for increasing bicycle visibility. So those are two of the types of quick build treatments that will be part of our toolbox. Likewise, intersection conflict marking. So across intersections, noting that with green paints, both to drivers and to bicyclists, this is a space that conflict could occur. So please be mindful of other traffic, for vehicles turning, for bicycles turning, etc. Pedestrian gateways. So we do have a number of these at our crosswalks, but it's not universal. A lot of that is based on our crosswalk design guidelines, but we do still have some room to install more of this, and to remind drivers that to stop for pedestrians in the crosswalk. And this particular orientation, I think, we see a little bit less of this now, where we see one gateway usually in the center, and then on the sides we'll typically have like a city post, a delineator, those thinner posts we saw on the previous slide. That can also act as a bit of a traffic calming impact for for vehicles turning. It warns people, it warns drivers about pedestrians and other road users nearby, but it also frankly slows people down, especially as they're turning into or out of that area. Paint and post bump outs. So using these painted zones and delineator posts to create a bump out at an intersection, so that will reduce the distance that a pedestrian has to cross, and it slows vehicle speeds because they have to make a tighter turn through the intersection. And then sort of likewise, but instead of bringing the curb in, it's slowing sort of from the inside out as a hardened center line. So using posts and or rubber bumps along the center lines to help guide vehicles so that they're turning more slowly through the intersections. And so in both of those, it's really about slowing turning vehicles. For those of you who might probably have noticed this as you drive, or as you've seen drivers go through a turn, the slower, obviously, as we just said, slower speed does have an impact from a safety perspective in terms of if a crash happens, it's less likely to be severe. It also, gives better reaction time and, creates less of a blind spot for a vehicle will be a little bit more squarely pointed at the street it's turning onto. So there won't be an issue of, there's less likely to be an issue of a driver turning into, someone in the crosswalk or someone on the opposite street. So.
All right, so currently we are scoping the potential treatments on the map that is on your screen. So as Cyrus noted, there are several locations where we would be looking to add a layer of protection for cyclists. A good example of that would be on Maple Road. But one thing that we do need to account for are trash pickup, snow clearing, and driveways. So you will see there would be breaks, similarly along, if you go on State Street, there would be breaks in those to allow for, people to exit driveways. And then similarly, we do have some buffering, a painted buffer right now along Plymouth. So we'd be looking to add, for example, some of those Black City posts or a layer of protection into those existing buffered lanes. We do have 16 road corridors that we're looking to do with approximately 20 intersections. I know the question is going to be asked, why not all of them? One of the conditions of this grant is that if Federal Highway asks us to take this stuff out, we have to take it out. We cannot do concrete. We cannot move curbs. We cannot add RRFBs. We cannot create brand new crosswalks because that would require us to be digging in the ground and putting in ADA accessible ramps, and we were not funded for that kind of work. We also cannot take a lane away. It is very frustrating that there are restrictions that come with this project, but we are really trying to expand and identify as many potential locations for quick build, speed management type treatments that we can, given the funding parameters of the grant. So I will just very briefly note that we have identified Maple Road, Liberty Stadium, 7th, Scio Church, South Main Street, Eisenhower Parkway, Packard, Plymouth, Nixon, Glacier, Geddes. Oh, I always forget this one squiggle. And then intersections throughout some of these corridors as well. So again, we have 16 road corridors identified and 20 intersections. Again, I really want to stress this. We don't have $20 million to do all of this. We have 3.8 million minus the expense for the grant coordinator, minus the expense of the near miss video analytics system, and then that remaining amount will be put into construction. And Cyrus, I don't know if you want to take the near miss slide.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, we won't spend as much time on this today because it is sort of a separate subset of this project, but just as Suzanne mentioned earlier, we have cameras at many of our signalized intersections. So using those cameras to capture data on, right now we respond largely from a safety perspective. Our biggest data metric is when a crash actually occurs and is, reported on to the police. But we know, anecdotally, we know from the public, we know from our own experiences that near misses happen. So the goal is to, that's a deeper data set that we can use to see, well, things are happening, things are almost happening a lot at this location. What is the behavior that's happening? What can we do to mitigate that? So because it depends on signalized, because it depends on these cameras, and those cameras are often at signalized intersections, you'll notice the key corridors, kind of go in line with that. So Stadium, Maple, Huron, all of these roads that have signalized intersections and grid smart cameras to come to kind of go along with that.
All right, so our next step. We do have some upcoming engagement opportunities. Right now, obviously, you are participating in our office hours, so we really do thank you for participating this evening and for populating that question chat. We do have a survey that is up and available on the website right now, and that will run through the end of this month, and it asks 3 questions. Those questions being, do you have any questions about the Safe Streets project? For the proposed quick build locations, are there any safety challenges or site-specific conditions that we should be aware of as we're working through kind of preliminary design? And would you like to be informed about future updates during this project? The next steps, as I already had mentioned, is the NEPA submission. That is, like I said, a very, very important date for us. We'll be entering our formal design phase in Q1 of 2025, which is now. And we will have another round of engagement towards like the spring and summer of 2025. So I just want to, if anyone needs, again, this survey, it is on the Safe Streets for All project website, which you all came to, as Jasmine noted, to get to the meeting link this evening. And there is a QR code on the screen you can just hover your phone over that and the survey will open up for you. Oh, wow, I jumped the gun on that. Sorry, Cyrus. I already read those questions. So this is just the list of survey questions that I just read to you. And